Hi, good day everyone. Today's English lesson or tutorial is based on the argumentative or persuasive essay writing. Now, the persuasive essay writing is usually introduced to students between the Form 1 to 3 level, and it is a requirement that students know the persuasive writing essay, possibly for their NCSE examination, and also it would be good for them to also have an idea of it so that they would be more prepared for the CSEC level. At the CSEC level, both the argumentative and persuasive essay are also taught to students in preparation for their CXE exam, the CSEC examination. Now, both essays are basically follows this same format, follows the same format. So therefore, it can be taught as one. The tone of the two essays might be slightly different, but for today, we are going to focus more on the format of the essays. And the rules of writing a good argument or persuasive essay. So we are going to take a look at an example question, which is a common question from basically this was from a very old CSEC past paper. However, it is still currently an issue in a lot of schools. As well, it is a good essay to get students to associate with something or be familiar with something, an issue that they can actually have an input in the class in terms of discussing this issue. So the question is, students should not be allowed cellular phones or other media devices while they are at school. So the question really, basically, we say question, but it is really a statement that is provided to students, and then they ask, write an essay either supporting or opposing this point of view. So a point of view or a statement is presented, and students would actually have to write an essay either supporting or opposing this view, not both of them. Okay, so you have to choose a side whether you support or you oppose, and let us go through the steps. Now, one of the most important things, and I'm repeating that, one of the most important things in argumentative essay writing is to do planning before you write. In other words, what you are trying to do is to come up with your answer before you write. Some students may believe that this would actually keep them back or cause them to lose time for their essay. And the opposite actually happens. This actually causes students to move faster for the examination because you already have a plan as to how you are going forward with your essay. So for the planning, we are going through these steps, and students should follow these steps accordingly. Identify the topic of the essay. So let us go back to the actual essay. The topic of the essay would basically be cellular phones or other media devices. Okay, so basically the topic is basically cellular phones or other media devices. Now they did not say to identify the argument, but the topic. So you are to identify, and you can also underline the words so that you would remember what you are about to write about. Okay, so identifying the topic, you should jot down your information as you go. For CXE students, they would be allowed a space to actually do their planning. I would suggest to students that they use their space for planning, because it would look very bad on your part if they had given you a section for planning and you did not use it. If it is something that you should have learned to do in the classroom, it will be obvious that you did not learn to do it and you were not prepared to write an effective essay. So the first thing that you do, as we are saying again, is to identify the topic of the statement. So identify the topic of the statement. So in doing so, you have to write it down. right? Then you choose a side of the argument, whether you are for or against. Now, I advise students that in choosing a side of the argument, that you choose a side that you can actually come up with arguments for that side. Some students try to stick with their personal points of views and get caught up in that, and sometimes are unable to move beyond 1 or 2 points. You cannot sit in an examination room trying to prove a point to someone who doesn't even know you, who would be marking your paper, that you believe in something, when the whole aspect of it is not a political statement that you are making, but you are writing an English examination. Okay, so choose a side of the argument that you know that you can come up with the amount of points so that you would write an effective 5-paragraph essay. The other thing that you do, and very important, this is actually answering the question here. Create at least 3 arguments to support the side chosen. So you are to come up after choosing a side of the argument, whether you agree with having cell phones in school or you don't agree with having cell phones at school, you are to create 3 arguments to support the side chosen. And the 3 arguments should be independent of each other. It should not be arguments that are related to each other or basically are worded differently but means the same. It should be independent arguments. So now we're moving on to writing. First aspect of writing, which a lot of students jump straight into, which you should not. You should actually do your planning first. First aspect of writing would be your introduction, which is 1 paragraph. For your introduction, you should introduce a brief discussion or explanation of the topic of the statement provided in a contemporary setting. So the topic that you had identified in your planning, you should provide a brief discussion or explanation, or some people say a definition as well. But if you don't have anything to research a definition, a dictionary, etc., you can actually provide a brief discussion or explanation of the topic of the statement provided. Okay, now this should be approximately 2 sentences. I'm repeating that. This should be approximately 2 sentences. It would possibly be the longest part of your introduction. Okay? Now, sentences does not mean lines. Lines and sentences are 2 different things. So a sentence can be made up of more than 1 lines. So you are to write 2 sentences. The second thing that you are supposed to have in your introduction is to introduce your thesis. Now, do not be afraid of the word thesis. Okay? A thesis in an essay would basically mean the main direction which you have chosen for your essay to be directed to. Your thesis can be the statement provided in the question or a modification of it. So let us go back to the questions. Students should not be allowed cellular phones or other media devices while they are at school. This sentence can actually be used as a thesis if you support the point of view. Okay, so you can use the statement that is given as your thesis. However, we have a problem with this in a lot of students' writing. Some students actually start their essay with the thesis, right? Which is, I believe, is a lower level essay. You should always start your essay, as we said here, to introduce a brief discussion or explanation of the topic of the statement provided. Then you introduce your thesis. Okay? So you should try to have it in that order. Okay? So this will be the better and would create a better quality essay. The third thing that you do in your introduction is to introduce the 3 arguments from your planning briefly. Notice that I have the word briefly there. So the three arguments that you came up with in your planning, you would introduce in your introduction briefly. It is very, very important that your examiner is able to identify these three aspects within your introduction. Especially your thesis and your three arguments must be introduced. Because this would tell the examiner that you know how to write an argumentative essay, and it will introduce to the examiner the points that are to come, the argument that is to come, and it will introduce your essay itself in the proper way. So we are going on here. We have to make sure that you understand. So I have to ask you, I know that I can't hear you right now, but is everything clear so far? Please remember to start with a discussion of your topic and not the thesis. Because a lot of students do that. No matter how much you tell them don't do that, they still do it, right? Your discussion can be on a contemporary discussion if the topic is cellular phones. It can be on how important cellular phones for everyday living in present-day society. Okay? And it can go on to say that students use it for both home use, personal use, studying, research, etc., etc. Okay? So you are able to compile 2 sentences. Another thing that we should remember from what we did so far, your planning is important, and the lack of it will be easily picked up by teachers and examiners. So don't feel if you don't do your planning, your essay will turn out just as good as the student who did his or her planning. The examiner or the teacher is able to identify students who did not do their planning by the quality of their work. The other thing, the introduction is the most important part of your essay, as it would reveal if you really understand how to write an argumentative essay. Okay, so we will continue now. So we will now move on to the body of the essay. The body must have at least 3 paragraphs. So if you think about from the beginning of the discussion of how to write an essay, from the planning stage to now, we keep mentioning 3. In your planning, you must come up with 3 arguments. In your introduction, you must introduce 3 arguments. And now your body must have 3 paragraphs. So I guess by now you should realize that there is a pattern being formed there. That the same 3 points that you came up with in your planning would be introduced in your introduction. And now we are going to show how it can be explained in the body of your essay. So each paragraph begins with, first thing, a transitional word or phrase. For example, firstly, furthermore, also, therefore, additionally, to conclude, in conclusion, therefore, etc. Now we would choose transitional words depending on our paragraph. Okay, so we must choose suitable transitional words for each paragraph. So again, I'm reiterating that each paragraph would begin with a transitional word. So that's the first word you will have for your paragraph. It would be continued with our second point, a topic sentence. This is the main idea of each paragraph in the body. Each topic sentence would have to be related to each point in the introduction. So in other words, a topic, a paragraph. So again, your topic sentence is the main idea of each paragraph in the body. Okay, so you can get your topic sentence from your introduction actually, which would be a point from your introduction. So for each paragraph, you would have a point from your introduction, creating 3 paragraphs. Then, after you have written your first sentence, which it is important that you start with a transitional word and a topic sentence, then you continue each paragraph with a full discussion or persuasive argument on the topic sentence presented at the start of the sentence. So in other words, you have your topic sentence and then you continue with having a full discussion of that particular topic sentence. Repeat these actions 3 times for each paragraph and you would have the body of your essay. So your body of your essay is basically based on your introduction. So that is why we are saying your introduction is very important. Your introduction has 3 points and the body of your essay would have 3 paragraphs, a point, a paragraph. So you are basically bringing down the point from your introduction into the body of your essay. Okay, creating the body of your essay. Okay, so we are going to continue. I hope that you all understand this. Is everything clear so far? Now remember, the body is an extension of the introduction. The body must use the arguments from the introduction, 1 argument per paragraph. Try to be persuasive by using questions, examples, etc. Each paragraph should be approximately 6 to 8 lines each. Underwriting could mean you did not develop your ideas enough. Overwriting can cause problems with your expected word count and time management for the exam. Okay, so it is important that you understand in terms of your paragraphing how much lines you need to go to. 6 to 8 lines should work for most people unless you have a very large handwriting. But basically for the NCSE exam, your essays are supposed to be 350 words, and for CXE, believe it or not, your essay is approximately 300 to 350 words as well. So this is why it is important for students in Form 1 to 3 to already start practicing your persuasive essay writing skills or your argumentative essay writing skills. So by the time you are in the CSEC level, you would just have to develop a better quality argument in your essay, etc. Okay, so it will be beneficial to you to start learning this by now, because the essays are not much different from each other from Form 1 to 3 to CSEC. We will continue now. Our last aspect of writing is the conclusion. The conclusion should be like a mirror of the introduction. It should reiterate the main ideas presented for arguments to reinforce your arguments as well. Okay, so it should be like a mirror of your introduction, meaning that you are going to say over or write over the main ideas presented for arguments. Okay, there should be a recommendation with consideration for the opposing argument, because most students would know that there would be opposing arguments. Say for instance, for cell phones and other media devices, people can argue, especially in these times, that using laptops and other media devices would be helpful in school and out of school to get their assignments done, for in case of any emergencies, to reach parents in case of any emergencies, to communicate with parents in case of any emergency, to also it is lighter, it is easier to transport, there's more room for research, etc. Okay, so it can replace an entire book bag. So what you have to do if you say that no, we don't want cell phones, we don't want media devices in school, you have to be aware of the opposing argument and you have to come up with some sort of recommendation. Say supposedly a recommendation can be that the media devices used must be controlled by the school, it must be owned by the school, monitored by the school, etc., so that students now would not be able to do any bad stuff on their phones, waste time in school, etc., etc. So this is just an example of how you can proceed with making a recommendation. Remember to begin your conclusion with a transitional word as well. Some of the transitional words mentioned before can be in conclusion, some of the transitional words used before can be in conclusion, therefore, to conclude, etc. Okay? So this is basically a good format that you can use to follow to write your argumentative essay or your persuasive essay. Now, having a video tutorial is really good because anything that you missed out and everything is, there's also it is typed out. So basically it is not only what I'm saying, you can pause the video and you can make notes if you want to. You can listen to the video more than once. You can use the video while writing an essay so that it can be a guide. So I hope that you all make full use of this in your upcoming assignments and in practicing for your upcoming examination as well.